Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome editor, Sports Illustrated Group, Terry McDonald.
Thank you very much. I have to tell you to begin with that I have done this before. I did it in Beijing and I did it in Delhi, but I have never had a panel with the kind of potential that we have here today. This is because although the idea of the panel is general, an African moment, a South African moment, we've heard of the legacies and the economic implications and transformational potential. The men on this panel are very specific people. They are not just, they are athletes and leaders and businessmen, of course, and they are famous and they are accomplished, but they are significant human beings in the history of South Africa. Danny Jordaan, an activist as a young man, anti-apartheid activist, now is the man more than anyone who is responsible for bringing the World Cup to South Africa. He is the CEO of World Cup 2010. That's right? Yeah, it is. Right.
Thank you.
And Francois Pienaar, the captain of the South African Springboks at the time, when they won the World Cup in rugby, perhaps the most significant event in the history of sport anywhere in terms of what it did for the country that he and his teammates won for. The movie Invictus is about this moment. It is, he's played by Matt Damon in this movie. And between the two of them, they have mingling destinies that if I can allow them to have a conversation, I think will lift us all. And they're very, very funny also. Let's sit down.
Thank you.
I'm going to start by asking Danny for a very brief capsule of where we stand in the World Cup. But before that, I want to tell you that when he walked in, Francois said, "Well, congratulations, you must be very proud." Danny said, "I'm actually very, very tired." And then we followed up, and I said, "Well, and what are you going to do next?" He said he'd prefer to work at the post office, his next job, but that's not his job now. So where do we stand?
Well, I'm happy to sit because, as I said, we have been standing around. It's incredible. The World Cup is about the 64 matches that we must deliver, and we have delivered 52 out of the 64. Everyone started on time in South Africa, on this African continent. Everyone was televised to more than 198 countries. On opening day, we broke the world record. The Obama election, you had 10 million hits per minute. The opening match, 18 million internet users per minute. It's a world record now, established in South Africa. The television audience all over the world, the highest ever, in Brazil, in England, and all over the world, the highest television audience in this event. So there are many world firsts for a World Cup in South Africa. Of course, from a revenue standpoint, and that was the main argument as to why Africa had to wait 80 years to host its first World Cup, was the argument that it's not a place that you consider for serious investment. It's not a place where you take major events. And so we waited 80 years. On that score, FIFA has generated its highest revenue ever out of a World Cup, $3.2 billion US. And in the last FIFA Congress 2 weeks ago, FIFA decided to pay each of the 208 members of FIFA a bonus of $250,000 right there in that meeting. It was just incredible. The first time that members came to a meeting and got a World Cup bonus midway through the World Cup. And so the story goes on. It's just an incredible success and a very positive one for our country and our continent.
Yeah. Can we sort of rewind to some earlier days of this, I think, same story? Did you tell us the first time that you heard of Francois Pienaar?
Well, Francois Pienaar, of course, we had to consider many things after...
What year was this now?
After 1990, when Mandela walked out of prison here, we had to think about the kind of South Africa that we are going to shape from 1990 onwards. And Francois, of course, was a good rugby player at that time. And we...
Think.
Very good rugby player. But the president of rugby then was a man called Danny Craven. So he looked at us and we were talking about bringing all the different codes of sport together in a single unified structure and hosting a series of major events. And he looked at us, he called us then, we were a sports organization called the NSC, Simos Mashishiya, who were just out of university then. He looked at us and he said to us, "You are the ANC in tracksuits. You don't know anything about sports. Now you talk about hosting major events and so on." But we pursued the idea of two things. One, creating single non-racial football, rugby organizations, and two, have a series of major events. Of course, the '95 Rugby World Cup was the first big event. Francois was the captain, a very focused team, and a very important moment at that time in our history. And then '96, the African Cup of Nations, and all of the other events. We lost a few. We made a bid for the Olympics 2004. We lost, made a bid for the World Cup 2006. We lost. Rugby made a bid for 2011. Rugby lost. But our history has also showed us that when you pursue a goal that is worthy, like the liberation of your country, you don't give up. You have setbacks, you get defeated, but you pursue those goals. And today we're sitting here with the history of '95 and Francois and the World Cup in the middle of the World Cup and sitting with you.
All right. Francois, this is a very cliched question. I have to ask it. How did you like the movie?
I think there's a couple of sides to that, but if you played by Matt Damon, who's incredibly bright, very good looking, articulate, then you must like the movie because he's playing you. But
well, he told you he played bigger than he is too. On screen.
The first time I saw him was when he visited me in Cape Town, and I said, "I'll cook for you," because he said, "I want to meet you." I said, "Then come to where I live." And I like to, on a weekend, have a glass of wine and spend some time in the kitchen. So I said I was going to cook. My wife didn't think I was funny because, I mean, this guy is an Uber star. He's coming to our house. And I was busy in the kitchen, and there was a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and I still had an apron on, and there stood Matt Damon. And he just laughed, and his first words were, "I'm much bigger on screen." And then he gave me this big hug, and we struck a relationship. But the first time I never saw any blurbs of the movie. The first time I saw it was in LA, and all these the superstars of the big screen come to you and says, "I hope you like the movie." I said, "Well, I better like this movie." And there's certain things I love about the movie. I love the ending. I love what it did for South Africa. I love Madiba. Everybody loves Madiba. But there's other things that, you know, when you're watching it, it's self-interest, but it's benign self-interest because, you know, it's bizarre watching a part of your life being portrayed by Hollywood. In the movie, what I would like to have seen more of is our coach, who was the architect of our success, and our management team, very strong management team. In the movie, the team is portrayed as a bit conservative, politically conservative, which I understand because you have to set up apartheid, and how do you do that in 90 minutes in Madiba's life, because it's about Madiba's life. So in the movie, you would see that the team resisted singing the national anthem, where in reality, we got somebody in to come and teach us. And the national anthem is 5 languages, and some of the guys can barely speak Afrikaans properly, so they had to sing 5. I mean, I laughed. We cried with laughter how the guys got to, you know, form the words of Nkosi Sikelele. And this one guy that played with me in the front row, and I played in the forwards, and we're not very bright when you play in the forward pack. It's the guys at the back that are the bright ones. He would start off by singing the words that he knows, and then he started miming, and that's how we got through the anthem in the beginning. So the team was far more progressive. You can't win the hearts and minds of people if they can't trust you, if you're not genuine. And in 1986, as a law student, I coached Jabulani High School in Soweto. You know, we always wanted to put something back. And also in the movie, you would see that the team sort of resisted going into the townships. And the movie sketched a scenario that Madiba asked us to go and do coaching clinics. We did it on our own bat. You know, we went in there, and the guys absolutely loved it. So in the course of those 6 weeks, how this country changed was incredible. So those are the things I
have to ask you, though, I mean, when we're serious, I don't know, it's not a motivational question, but I mean, you had to lead this team. You led this team. What made you think you could win? You were wildly not favored.
Well, that's the other thing about the movie I didn't like, is the fact that they portray the team as hopeless. Really, the movie is like the team is, and then we win. It's like everybody sitting in this room, yeah, you won't achieve success if you don't work bloody hard. And in 93, we came out of isolation, we had to learn. In 1992, we haven't played against the world. And all of a sudden, we started competing against the world. In 93, I captained a team up in Johannesburg, and fortunately, we won the first ever super competition, the Super 10, which is now the Super 15 next year. And we played against most probably one of the best New Zealand teams. We beat them in the final. 94, we toured New Zealand, and we lost margins, like we saw yesterday. And we will see through the Soccer World Cup. It's about margins. So going into the 95 World Cup, we were not the favorites. Australia were, but we had a very good team. You know, we had a really good team, and we had to focus on a couple of things that you needed to get right.
But were you thinking about the implications of a victory for your country?
Not in the beginning. In the beginning, it was all about victory. In the beginning, it was all about winning. But as we played the first game, yeah, and Madiba came out and he opened the World Cup. Something happened. There was magic. Madiba's magic was spread all over this country. And from going in the morning, going to breakfast, a black lady would serve you breakfast. She would work in the hotel. And she would say, what a great match you had yesterday. You must eat more food. You must be strong. And she would not have watched rugby. She would not have watched rugby. And trailing up and down this country and seeing how people changed. You know, in 1994, we had big wounds in this country, really big wounds and big scars. And sport gave us an opportunity to start healing. And that's what 95 did with Madiba, his vision. I mean, he wrote the future. He embraced sport. And he said, through sport, we can change. And sport is so powerful. And fortunately, you know, the fact that we won amplified it. It put it on steroids. And we saw a nation change. We saw people seeing each other in a different light. And we had that again. People won't know, especially the people from America, rugby being quite a popular sport amongst the white people in South Africa, only about the white people back in 94. A couple of weeks ago, we had the Super 14 finals. And because of the Soccer World Cup, the team, our team here, the very good team, the Blue Bulls, they play in Pretoria, they had to go and play in Soweto. Now, their supporters would never, ever have gone to Soweto in their lives. They were forced to go into Soweto. And they left Soweto, changed people. I heard some unbelievable stories about this guy coming there with his big truck, couldn't find parking. And the guy said to him, well, park in my driveway. And he had visions of, oh, they're going to steal my hubcaps. Or he went to the game, came back, and the car was fine. And the gentleman said to him, would you like a beer? And he was sat in Soweto drinking a beer, and he left a changed man. And those sort of things is what sport has given our country. And I really want to compliment Danny on putting this World Cup together, because I went to the opening match, and everybody was on tenterhooks. I lived abroad, I traveled abroad quite extensively and saw articles about South Africa and that this country would not be able to put this together. You know, it's too big, it'll fail. And I attended the opening game, and there was 2,500 press people standing there with video monitors. And the pictures beamed across the world of a happy nation, a nation that can do things, that put together a very classy but not ostentatious opening ceremony, and then a team that actually scored one of the greatest goals by Simpiwe Tshabalala. Again, when I said, I get gooseflesh. When I walked out of that stadium and I saw how people walked together and embraced each other, then I know this country's got a great future.
This is like why I'm talking about this panel. I saw them interviewed backstage. They do their own transitions. There's very little need for help. So that right back to you on this. I saw you give a speech at a conference not unlike this about the globalization of sports. The Economist gave this with the American National Football League a couple years ago in London, and I stayed after to ask you about it because I was so moved by not only the logic and intelligence of it, but by the candor of it. And when we talk about what it took to put this together, the years it took, a lot of people go into something and they have a, you know, they have an ambition, they know what they want to be, but they don't necessarily have a plan for it. You need a plan because of the politics, the global politics of sports. It's more political than politics sometimes. So what I'd like to know is how you looked at it from day one and started that journey. And now that you have come out, is that why you want to work in the post office?
Yeah, I want an easier job. But you know, after I said, after the World Cup, I'd like to have a nice job. I'd like to work in the post office because it seems you sit there, and if they come and buy stamps, it's fine. If no one pitches up, it's also fine. 11 o'clock it's tea, and 1 o'clock is lunch, and 4 o'clock you go home. I said, this is the ideal job. Then the next day I got a call from the Tshwane post office. He said, look, I think you misrepresented what's happening in the post office. We are inviting you to please come to the Tshwane post office on a Friday afternoon at the end of the month and come spend that day with us. I said, well, it seems that I have to leave that until after the World Cup. It seems quite a daunting challenge. But yeah, it's been quite a long journey.
What about the politics of it, the international politics?
The politics of the post office?
Yeah, no, it's sports.
Of sport.
You just explained the post office.
No, I think, look, sport is of course changed since even 1994 up to now. One of the things of major events, of course, is the bottom line. Major international federations like FIFA, like the IOC, like the IRB. The World Cup comes once every 4 years. And in that 4 years, you have to generate the revenue to sustain the organization and support the programs over the next 4 years. So the commercial considerations are very, very high priority for the International Federation. So that is one side. The second issue is about Africa's power in global football. Africa, we are sitting with 53 countries. It is the passion of the entire continent. And yet, at the decision-making level, we only have 4 representatives. And then we find smaller continents with 8 representatives. So there's an imbalance in the power relations at the decision-making.
Let me just interrupt you to just say one thing. Danny has compared, he says that this is all, that everything is political, especially sports, and that the struggle to bring the World Cup to South Africa, you make it parallel to the struggle, to the political struggle in South Africa.
Well, I think it is the struggle in pursuit of goals that many people regard as impossible. You know, yes. I think even, and here's Rob Davies, we were in the streets for many, many years to say, free Mandela, release Mandela. And the people in the country said, well, never, forget about it. And then that moment happened in our history. The idea that one day we'll all vote black and white together, people said is impossible. Even after, and just before kickoff of this World Cup, the newspaper said that there was going to be a race war, blood on the streets of South Africa. None of those things materialize. So it is not what people say about you, but your commitment, your dedication, as Francois said, your hard work that pays off in the end is to convince people, is to engage them, to be there in the argument. And the argument in the World Cup, you know, it started off, first they will not be able to complete the stadiums on time, we did. They were run out of money, we did not. They won't have the broadcast capacity, we proved them wrong. We won't have the technology, we proved them wrong. And so then they went to the ridiculous to say, no, there's going to be a major earthquake in South Africa just before kickoff. Well, God is also on our side. That didn't happen. Then they said, no, there's huge snakes in South Africa, very poisonous snakes.
Snakes?
Snakes. He said one snake can kill off 2 teams, so the team mustn't come. Of course, the only thing that bit the teams was the opposition, and those who went home not because of the snakes, but of goals. And so you find that always, if we had to listen to those voices, nothing would have changed in this country. Change comes about because of your commitment, your dedication, and hard work, and the infrastructure that we have here. Many of the things, if we didn't put the energy in, we've not have achieved. We have world-class airports, stadiums, road, telecommunications. We have optic fiber connections of the 10 venues with Johannesburg at the IBC. That capacity of bandwidth available for business leaders, business processes after this event. We have invested in all of the technology. And I think that surprised the world. And one of the things that has happened is the delegations coming now. And I felt like a Roman Catholic priest coming to make confessions and saying, you know, we did actively engage in the process to discourage our players from coming. We told them all sorts of, we are so sorry. We were wrong. We are just so happy with what we found in the country. It's totally different. And we said FIFA was wrong to give you the World Cup. We'd like to apologize to you. And, you know, and like the Roman priests, you never give the names of those who made the confession. You keep that a secret. But I think we have moved beyond that, and people are having a wonderful celebration in this. And the big teams, like Brazil said, this is the best World Cup that they've ever played in. And this is a team that did not miss a single World Cup in their history. They said that. The English said this is the best. The Germans said it's the best. And so we don't need them to tell us that it is the best. It is the African continent that said before kickoff, this will be the best ever World Cup.
Terry, I see Danny Scars is healed because when Mr. Dempsey didn't vote, there was a lot of outcry on the streets. And I, for my sins, I was asked to head up the Rugby World Cup bid, which I did pro bono. And your question about politics in sport, when you have the quantum of funds that are flowing now because of these major events, for me it was sad to see how politics played a role in rugby and awarding the Rugby World Cup then. Obviously because we lost, I'm saying this, but I back it up with the report from the technical committee that came and looked at our stadium, they looked at our infrastructure, and they delivered a report saying that a World Cup in South Africa would be the most successful financially and from an operational perspective. But yet we did lose. So when you look at these major events, it seems that the founding members will always control the destiny of those.
The founding members.
The founding members. And in rugby, the Celts are very strong in the way that they award World Cups. But now they've been clever because they've bundled the 2 World Cups together. 2015 and 2019 in rugby terms were bundled together, so there was no egg on anybody's face. You can then award it to and also you can wrap up the television deals. So politics in sport is, it's sad, you know, it's sad to see that there is politics.
Can I ask you, just sliding over out of that, when you reflect on what is happening today and what happened 15 years ago, I know that Nelson Mandela is the godfather of your children. When you see him and you reflect, do you talk about this? Yeah,
I mean, we've been very blessed. Maybe I'll share the story, which I think the audience might like. You know, this is after the World Cup. A lot of people might say there was good leadership. Madiba saw vision, but we left and I went to the UK. We lived in the UK for 7 years, and both our children were born there. And when John was a couple of days old, the telephone rang very early in the morning, and it was Madiba. And he phoned to congratulate us with the birth of Jean. He didn't have to do this. It was genuine leadership and a bond that we forged. And he spoke to Noreen. I thought it was a hoax caller. I said to her, put down the phone. Somebody got our number. It's one of the DJs here that, you know, can mimic his voice. But it was him. It was very early in the morning. I think it was 6 o'clock because Madiba gets up at 4 o'clock. And so he gave him a Xhosa name, Nkokele, which means leader. And little Stefan, when he started growing a bit of a brain, he was bemused by the fact that, you know, why is Jean lucky and I'm not lucky? And a couple of years ago, we went and had tea with Madiba, and Stefan walked in front and he said, Madiba, would you please be my godfather? And Madiba laughed and smiled and he embraced him. And he gave him a Xhosa name. And the people that do not understand the culture, when a Xhosa name is given, they hope that it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So there's a lot of meaning in the name. And he said to Stefan, I will call you Gocha, which means the brave one, because he realized how this kid must have mustered up all the bravery in his little body to walk up to him. So we've been incredibly blessed by having a leader, a true leader that, you know, he doesn't only speak, but he delivers and he embraces. And just coming back to the movie, the one thing that was great about the movie for me was there's a scene on Robben Island, which is almost 100% true. And it was a scene after we played here against Australia, who were the favorites, and we beat them. We took the team to Robben Island the next day, and everybody walked past. And I was the last, and I walked into Madiba's cell, and I stuck out my arms, and I could touch the walls, and I looked through the bars. And I realized that, you know, this man was in Robben Island for 17 years, in jail for 28 years. And he came out and he wore a white man's jersey when we played in the World Cup with the Springbok on his heart. And I just, you know, I knew we were an incredibly safe hands. So then, I mean, the tears rolled down my cheeks. And when I watched this in Hollywood, I started crying uncontrollably. My boys thought there was something wrong, and it was just very special. So when I speak about Madiba, I get quite emotional.
That jersey was number 10, which is Francois' number.
Number 6.
Number 6.
Those are the clever guys. From 9 to 15 are clever.
I'm sorry.
The 1 to 8 is...
It's good to back up.
No, Francois will forgive you.
But you.
There was a man called Danny Craven who'd never forgiven you. So Francois is okay. No, I think that Madiba, of course, his hands, his fingerprints are all over all of these events, you know, in hosting and making bids. Because he believed fundamentally in the power of football and sport, rugby, cricket, all of this sport. He was a boxer. But the ability of sport to bring people together, to develop a new nation in this country, to bring about social cohesion, nation building, those were the energies that he put in. And of course, the bids 2006 and 2010, he was there in Zurich saying that I now feel like a young man of 15. And then the BBC asked him, what else would you like to achieve in your lifetime? He said, well, I've achieved everything. I'm now ready to go. We said, Madiba, where do you want to go to? Don't talk about going anywhere. We still have to deliver this World Cup. Of course, it was such an emotional moment. For him and Archbishop Tutu, we have photos where he started dropping some tears, and Archbishop Tutu took out his handkerchief to wipe off the tears. It is just incredible, these two human beings who traveled the world with us. Archbishop Desmond Tutu told us, he says, look, I will support the bid, but one of the things that you must not do with those powerful politicians who must decide, you must not bribe them. If you bribe, you must tell me now I'm not part of your campaign. So we said, no, we will not bribe. And then we had the first meeting with the FIFA executive, and Archbishop Tutu said, if you vote for us, I will make sure that you get a first-class ticket to heaven. So I kept quiet, and when we went out, I said, Arch, but you said we must not bribe. Isn't that a bribe? He says, no, it's not a bribe. A bribe is only when you give things to people who are alive. In order to get their first-class ticket, they must first die. That's not the bribe. I say, oh, okay, Arch.
We're going to get to a time where you can ask questions if you'd like. I think some of you may have some. But before we do that, can you both think about, it's the 15th anniversary of your great victory. 5 years from now, 15 from now, 30 years from now, how we will look back on this and where we will be. I mean, clearly the buildings will be gone, but something else will remain, perhaps? Or perhaps there will be more buildings.
Well, I think we wanted 5 outcomes out of the World Cup. First, increase in tourism. If you just take Mexico, tourists from Mexico is about 300 a year into South Africa. This World Cup has brought 20,000 Mexican fans into South Africa. They're all saying we are coming back. Wonderful country. We have over 365,000 visitors for this event, all over the world, from Slovenia, Slovakia, countries that probably never have contributed to the growth of tourism. So we are very happy on that score. 2, the infrastructure. In the middle 90s, people were talking about infrastructure stagnation in South Africa. Now, after the investment in infrastructure, we see people's comment. And if you look at the reports from Deloitte saying that infrastructure investment by public and private sector is key for further investment, business growth, and that is a success story of what we've achieved up until now. It's about nation building and social cohesion. It's about the pride of South Africans. A lady who left this country 20 years ago to live in Australia came back to see what was happening in the World Cup. She said, you know, all of the things that I had of a future of South Africa, when I came back after 20 years, this country has generated such immense pride in me. I feel strongly South African again, stronger than 20 years ago. I am not going back to Australia. I'm going to come back and settle there. And that's the story of many South Africans who left, experts who came back to see South Africa, a different country, a country different to what they expected and the reason for leaving the country. They are coming back. So that is very important, not only a new nation, but a nation full of pride to deliver something that the world said we are not capable of. And a continent, of course, we celebrate with the African continent. And you see now many of the African countries are also pursuing the hosting of major events. We have Equatorial Guinea that's going to host the African Cup of Nations. We've seen Angola and the changes in Angola, investment in infrastructure in Angola, and all over the African continent, investment in infrastructure, seeking further investment, growing the business on the continent, creating jobs, creating a better future for the continent. All of those are important issues that comes as around the conversation of this World Cup.
Terry, I think to answer that question, I would like to rewind. In 1994, when Mandela became the first black president of South Africa, if anybody sketched the scenario to me that 14, 15 years on, forget about all the wonderful events we've hosted, that you will have a third peaceful general election in this country, that no political party will have a 2/3 majority so they can influence the constitution, that in the world's biggest economic meltdown, South African banks will be rated as some of the top banks in the world, and we'll come through this fairly unscathed, although there's still a lot of runway ahead. That because of security reasons, the Indian Premier League will leave India and come to South Africa and would be put together in 3 weeks and be very successful. Pictures beamed to the world's biggest democracy. That the Lions, the British and Irish Lions, now for the American people, that's probably the biggest touring team in the world. The Celts and England, they send a team out here with 50,000 supporters that they would be here. And as their plane leaves, the Confed Cup would take place in South Africa. That the following year you'll have the biggest show in the world, the Soccer World Cup. That you'll have leaders that we have in this room visiting South Africa and considering investment in our country and in our future. I would have said impossible. You are seeing ghosts. We're not. We're living that. So 5 to 10 years from now, for me, the important thing, and there's major fault lines that needs to be fixed in South Africa. There's no, it's wonderful, sport is great, but there are fault lines. And these fault lines can only be fixed by leadership and investment in education. For me, we need to look at education, education, education. Find tomorrow's leaders today, wrap them up and give them a runway so that they can make sure that this country truly live out its potential. As the gateway to 1 billion people in Africa, almost 1 billion people, South Africa has got the know-how, it's got the potential, it needs leadership in all sectors for it to truly, again, impress the world.
That's fantastic. You can open this up to questions if you'd like. In the back.
Hi, my name is Christine Pearson, and I actually immigrated from America 20 years ago. So I've really seen firsthand what both Donnie and Francois were saying. I had the privilege of attending the opening ceremony of the World Cup in Soccer City a couple of weeks ago, and I got a last-minute ticket. So I sat between two big, burly Afrikaans guys. They had their faces painted with flags on them and were nervous wrecks. They kept saying, I can't take this, I can't take this. You would have thought they were at a rugby match. A few days later, I was in Cape Town and there was a furious discussion with some security guards. This is after our loss to Uruguay. And I joined in the discussion. And they said to me, you know, lady, our problem is that we don't have enough white guys on the team. So to me, those are just two small examples of the wonderful, wonderful transitions in this country, and what a privilege it is to live here now.
Well, thanks for that. Ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you very much. I'm delighted to see Danny on the stage, because forgive me for being unedited, but I think he's one of the greatest unsung heroes in this country for what he has endured in the last 6 years, plus the previous bid. And the fact that only 48 hours before the games did the country switch on, and you could feel the excitement of, can we kick the ball, please? Because we want to get on with it. I'd love to know from both of you, and particularly Francois, who is clearly a hero in our nation, from what we learned after the Rugby World Cup and the transformational power and how that can be turned into human capital to change the country, which it has done. What can we learn from the Rugby World Cup's victory and how it re-engineered the nation, and adopt that to the learnings post-games? Because a country does not sustainably change with 30 days of football. It's now the country's responsibility to turn that into international confidence and, more importantly, domestic confidence to drive investment. What can we learn to transfer to make sure that this investment does indeed deliver beyond the qualitative?
Great question. You guys decide.
We haven't learned, because we stumble across these events. 1995, we stumbled across a wonderful World Cup that healed wounds, but I don't think we maximize that potential. Again, if I take rugby a month ago, what happened in Soweto, I don't know if we've learned. I don't think we would maximize that, because there's an opportunity, there's a window of opportunity to use sport, again, to grow a nation, and also to encourage foreign investment and encourage people to come to South Africa. So one would like to see that. I would also think that there should be a social tax on sport. Maybe I'll give you a simple example. We need houses in our country. We need people to have a roof over their heads and to have electricity, because that changes the mindset, in my view, of many, many people once you have a property. Because it's my turf, and I have all the answers. But I think maybe a debate is necessary in our country to look at how can we maximize what sport has given us?
Well, very often people talk about sport as creating 90-minute patriots, because when the match is over, you go back to face the reality of day-to-day life. And we have a moment, and Africa has a moment, because the people are now having a shared vision, shared pride of this country. There's no debate that some people are unhappy. Everybody is happy. Everybody is proud of what we've achieved. And we have a movement, but you then have to engage on the serious issues that Francois is saying. I don't think this country's youth has been mobilized behind anything in this country as behind this World Cup. You see them in the streets, in the stadiums, you see them in conversations. You now have to address that question of education, of having the youth being focused on developing the next generation of leaders, investing in all of the social needs. And that's why that was an important issue for us, that when we build World Cup infrastructure, it must not be at the expense of the social needs of the country. So when you look at the budgets during the period of construction, there was always an increase in social spending on education, on health, on HIV and AIDS, and all of those things. Because as a developing country, we could not afford to host the World Cup and ignore the social needs of the people. And of course, there is the biggest challenge for us. But I think we are in a space where all of the people are focused. They want this country to create better opportunities, create jobs, and of course, investment is key to the further growth of this country.
I'm sorry we're out of time. It's flashing. But I told you, let's thank them.